What's going on, gardeners? It is Sunday, April 3rd, and it is a gorgeous spring day here on the southeastern coast of North Carolina. Do you have a fruit tree or fruit trees in the ground that you have planted that are barely moving and barely seem to be budging or growing at all? Well, I'm going to address that issue today. I'm going to discuss 5 different reasons why your fruit tree is barely growing and what you can do about it. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing and hitting the bell to receive new video notifications, and check out our Amazon storefront and spread shop in the video description for a list of the gardening products I use and awesome custom designed apparel and other gear. Your support is greatly appreciated. The first thing that you should do, believe it or not, is absolutely nothing. You need to sit back and you need to assess your situation and ask yourself, when did I plant this fruit tree? When it comes to growing fruit trees, or really any kind of tree, there's an old adage that goes, the first year they sleep, the second year they creep, the third year they leap. Now, what does that mean? Well, when you plant a fruit tree in ground, you're taking it out of its comfortable container that it's used to living its entire life in. You're planting it in a different climate, in a different soil, dealing with different weather that it never had to deal with before. So generally speaking, most of us plant our fruit trees in either spring or fall, and then the winter comes, and the winter is usually a period of time where the trees will go into dormancy or won't grow much at all. So when you plant your fruit trees, generally speaking, they haven't been in ground for more than anywhere from 2 to 6 months, depending on when you planted it, for it to actually try and establish itself. So that very first year in ground, usually it's the roots just trying to adapt to the soil and the tree adapting to the climate. So it's just trying to put down its roots and establish itself. That's why the very first year it sleeps. The second year is when it really starts getting going. The second year is when your fruit tree puts on a lot of growth, but it's not in the direction that you may think. The second year, the tree usually tries to grow down into the ground and really put in that foundational root system. Now, because trees are living beings, they never put 100% of their energy into one thing. So while they will put most of their energy into growing roots, they will grow up a little bit. And that's why we say the second year they creep. They will put a little bit of top growth on, but the second year they're mostly growing underground where we can't see. It's the third year that they leap, that they tend to grow up and really put on a lot of growth. And that's because generally by then they have a good, strong, established root system. They're in tune with your climate, they're used to the soil, so now they feel confident enough to put most of their energy into upward growth. So it's really that third season when you can expect to see most of the growth. This right here is an Asian persimmon that I just planted last year, and it hasn't really gotten much larger at all because the first year it was just a partial year that this tree tried to establish itself. So it's about the same size it was when it went in 10 months ago or so, and it's just really starting to put on some leaves, and I think this year it's going to creep along and give me a little bit of canopy growth, but mostly it's going to focus on its roots, and that is what I expect out of this tree. This Asian persimmon tree, on the other hand, I planted 1 year before that other Asian persimmon tree that I just showed you. So this is actually on its 3rd year, on its leap year. Now, because I have my trees set up so well, and I have the perfect soil conditions for them, which I will get into later, my trees tend to grow ahead of schedule. So I got more growth on my second year than I would have otherwise expected because I set these up for success. This tree actually was a lot larger about a month ago, but I pruned it during the dormant season, and I'll make sure to link to that video above so you can see how to prune this type of fruit tree, but it was a lot bigger. Now this 3rd year, I really expect it to put on a tremendous amount of growth and maybe even flower and fruit for me. So year 3 is really when you start to see a lot of progress with your fruit trees. Year 4 is when the harvests, generally speaking, really start to come in, as long as they are a grafted fruit tree where mature scion wood was used. Now, that being said, if you're still having problems and your trees seem to be lagging behind schedule, or if you just planted your fruit trees and you want to set them up for the best chances possible to grow and fruit early, I'm going to show you the other 4 reasons that you may be struggling with your fruit trees and why they could be lagging behind. The second reason why your fruit trees may not be growing or are lagging behind is because you didn't put down a compost and mulch layer, or it wasn't thick enough. The compost and mulch layer is absolutely critical to the success of growing fruit trees. Think of it like this. When you plant your fruit tree, it has to adapt to the new soil type that it's not used to growing. It's used to growing in this perfect potting mix that is designed to be light and loamy. Well, your soil is almost certainly heavier than that. So those roots have to learn how to grow into that heavier soil. And this is especially an issue if you have a heavy clay type of soil. That can really stunt the growth of your fruit trees because it can take a while for them to put down those strong roots. So the way I always get around that is I always plant my fruit trees about 4 inches high. So if this is the soil level down here, if this is final grade of the ground, I'll have the root ball sticking up 4 inches, and then I will fill that up with 1 to 2 inches of compost, and then I will put down 3 to 4 inches of a natural mulch like pine bark nuggets or hardwood bark mulch or pine straw or weed-free, seed-free grass clippings. Because like I said, it can be hard for those roots to grow down, but fruit trees love sending tiny surface feeder roots all throughout the top of the ground. So if you plant them deep in a heavy soil, they're going to have trouble growing down, they're going to have trouble growing out with surface roots. You can't change your soil type, but what you can do is you can put down 3 to 4 or maybe even more inches of wonderful light loamy organic matter, and those surface roots can start growing all throughout that organic matter, and that will help the tree put down roots more quickly and establish more quickly. I'm right here underneath my fig tree where I have a solid 4 inches, maybe more, of compost and mulch down. And if I dig down, you can see surface roots. Whoa, look at that. Look at that. There's an earthworm right there. There's an earthworm just hanging out. And then I have all of these are surface roots that are growing all throughout the ground here. And this keeps everything moist, all of this organic matter. It allows all of these surface roots to grow through beautifully. It keeps the worms happy. It is the way to go. Plant them high. Always make sure to put your compost and mulch layer down, because that is the key to having your fruit trees, or any kind of tree really, take off immediately and grow ahead of schedule. The next reason why your fruit trees may not be growing well or are lagging behind is because you're not fertilizing enough. It is very important that you fertilize fruit trees, especially when they're young, to help them get a boost and really help them get going. I have noticed that there is a lot of resistance with gardeners towards fertilizing, and a lot of that has to do with the cost of fertilizer. It can be expensive, but there's also this belief that since you don't have to fertilize a forest, you don't have to fertilize your fruit trees. Well, that's only partially true. The reason why you don't have to fertilize a forest is because a forest is a self-sustaining ecosystem. The forest re-nutrifies itself. It drops leaves and it mulches itself, and it brings in all those worms and bugs. The forest floor is an amazing living, breathing collection of organisms. Some trees can even filter nitrogen out of the sky. If you live in a place where there's thunderstorms, lightning can actually split nitrogen gas, N2. It can split that and turn it into bioavailable forms of nitrogen fertilizer. So during thunderstorms, the sky can actually rain nitrogen fertilizer. But you are not growing a self-sustaining forest. You're growing an individual tree. And even if you have a food forest, young trees are not self-sustaining. It is not natural for you to order in a fruit tree from another part of the country and then plant it in a location. That's not natural. So because you're doing a man-made process, you're transplanting a tree which doesn't exist in nature, you have to give it a leg up and get them established. Once that tree becomes established, it can eventually become self-sustaining to a degree, but it will generally always benefit from fertilizing, especially when it's young. Now, when it comes to fertilizing, any organic fertilizer will do. I have this vegetable and tomato 356 from Walmart that's very affordable. Anything that's a 555, 444, where all N, P, and K are represented and the numbers are small and close together, will be just fine for your fruit trees. Now, when it comes to application timing, a lot of times they recommend a seasonal application. I generally like to fertilize every 2 weeks or every 4 weeks with a much smaller dose. My logic is, how would you feel if they only fed you once a season? I would rather have regular smaller meals. So I like giving small doses where you just take a couple of handfuls or maybe a 1-cup scooper and you put one down on each side of your fruit tree, and then add compost and mulch every season. And that will be enough to feed them while it's growing. If you live in a place with long winters, you don't have to fertilize them during the winter. I wouldn't even recommend fertilizing them 60 to 90 days within going into the winter. You don't want to encourage all this new growth right before the frost and freezes are going to start. You want to fertilize them in late winter, early spring, so the fertilizers have some time to break down. They take weeks or months to break down, so fertilize them about a month before your last frost date, maybe a little bit earlier. Get them prepared for breaking dormancy, and then you can taper off in the middle of summer, and towards late summer you can stop fertilizing. If you live in a place like the tropics or the subtropics where it doesn't freeze and your trees grow all year round, or you're growing an evergreen tree like citrus or avocados or a magnolia or something that always keeps its leaves, those you need to fertilize all year round. But you can taper some. You can fertilize them less if you have a defined cool season where not much growth happens. The fourth reason why your fruit tree may not be growing much or lagging behind is that you aren't watering enough. It takes quite a bit of water for a new fruit tree to establish. And the issue with fruit trees, or really any tree in general, is they can take a lot of stress and they tolerate a lot of stress before they really show you that they're stressed. If you don't water your tomatoes or your peppers, they will start to wilt immediately. Those types of annual vegetables, they can't tolerate stress, so it's obvious when we need to water them. A fruit tree could be dried out and going through a tremendous amount of stress, and they won't let you know. So while you think your fruit tree is not stressed out at all because it looks okay, it could be crying out for a drink of water and just holding it all in inside. So you may simply not be watering enough. Make sure that you keep your trees well watered, especially before they're well established, because they just don't have that feeder root system to go out searching for water all over the yard like a well-established tree can. This is also why a mulch and compost layer is so critical, because that mulch and compost layer will help maintain an even moisture level, and it will help prevent evaporation and keep those surface roots quenched. So make sure that you water frequently and make sure you have that mulch and compost layer down so your trees do not dry out. And the fifth reason why your fruit trees may not be growing or are lagging behind is because they are being outcompeted by weeds and grass. Now, I showed you how my trees love sending surface roots all throughout the compost and mulch layer. Well, grass and weeds can easily outcompete all of those surface roots, especially when a tree is young and not yet well established. The other problem with all of these weeds and grasses is if I were to give my trees fertilizer, the fertilizer, if it's liquid, is only going to penetrate the top inch or so of soil, and any granulated organics I put down on the surface are going to feed the surface. So they are all going to feed the weeds and grasses before they feed the tree. So you will just be wasting your fertilizer, and your trees will be outcompeted by the weed and grass pressure. I have let this raspberry patch here fall into disarray. So before they break dormancy, I have to rip all of these weeds and grasses out, and I'm going to have to put down fresh compost and mulch. Otherwise, I'm going to have a very poor raspberry season because they're just not going to get the energy that they need to produce good berries for me. So always make sure to keep all the weeds and grasses away. Keep them at least 2 feet away from your trees at all times, and put down that compost and mulch layer that prevent them from growing into your trees and taking all that nutrients. You'll also save a lot of money on fertilizer, and if you can put some kind of barrier down like bricks or stones or pavers or weed barrier to make sure that the grasses never grow around there, that's even better. And that right there are 5 reasons why your fruit trees may be lagging behind or not growing much at all. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask them in the comments section below, and I will do my best to answer them. So everybody, if you found this video helpful, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring that notification bell so you're notified when we release more videos like these. If you're curious about any of the products that I use in my garden, they are all linked down below in the video description in my Amazon storefront link. So check out what I have compiled there if you want to see everything that I use for real in my garden. While you're there, check out my spread shop for custom merch if you want to support the channel. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see all of you again on the next video. Look at this dessert. Oh, we have a cookie and some plain yogurt for a very special somebody for a St. Patty's Day treat. Whoa, 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 big noser. Dale, you gotta sit. Dale, now don't you be greedy. Don't wait. Hey, 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 hey. Okay. No, 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 no. Now this time we have to break it up because we know how Dale is. Oh, this is hard to break up. Urgh! Jeez, Britt, what is this thing made out of? All right, buddy. That is one firm cookie. Oh, Dale, you gotta try the cookie first. Oh, I knew those chompers would be able to make short work of that cookie. Oh, what a mess. Dale, you look like a monster. You look like a cookie-eating monster. Oh, enjoy it, my little cookie monster.